I am asked to speak in English, which is not my language and I am not in practice, but I shall try to convey my views and comments to you and points. Today's topic is related to or in reference to the killing of George Floyd, which triggered a movement in Europe in general and in the United States in particular. The killing of George Floyd was so brutal, or the scene was so pathetic that when we saw, my daughters wept, and it was shocking. But I was not expecting that the American society is still so alive that they come out instead of COVID-19. They came out and protested against the violence by the state. The police is the symbol of the state. So it was a very good sign that society is alive, and protest is by and large, we cannot say by and large non-violent, but no person has been killed in the movement. Some statues were brought down because the problem of apartheid or the suppression of black people in United States have a history. So history compelled them to brought down the statues. But it was not beneficial to anyone, because if you don't learn from history, it will repeat itself. History will repeat itself. So we have to learn from history, and so keep the symbols of past, maybe brutal or good or bad, but we should keep them to remind us again and again that we were like that. We were like that, and we have to come out from that. So a learning process, history is a learning process. If we learn, it will not repeat. If we will not learn, it will repeat. So I think that during the dragging down of the statues, one of the Gandhi statues in Washington DC was defiled. So that is my topic, that why people defiled the statue of Gandhi. Because they don't know the history well. If you read history wrong or read wrong history, it will lead you to such things which are not correct or which is violent. So what is the history? That Gandhi was understood or being understood by few groups that he was against black. And what is the fact? So I want to put these facts before you. I will start from 1945, when after Second World War there was Charter Conference of United Nations in San Francisco. They asked Gandhi for a message, and Gandhi sent a message. His point was, he was against war, he condemned war in the strongest words, what is fraud behind a war. But how peace can be there, what we should do for peace, that was important for Gandhi, and he said that unless there is no universal liberty and equality, universal freedom and equality of different colored races, equality of colored races, universal freedom of colored races and nations. So this emphasis on freedom and equality both for different colored races and nations Gandhi focused on these two things, 2 points on which human society is fragmented and can create violence, can create hatred among each other. So color is one point and nation is one point. So there must be universal freedom and equality among all these things. So it shows clearly that Gandhi had no point of feeling difference between colors. There may be difference, but for Gandhi it was equal and should not be discriminated against or discriminated for. They must be equal and they must be free. So from Gandhi's statement it's clear. But it's not enough, because people were asking that why Gandhi was not doing something for the black people when he was in South Africa. So what was the cause? Gandhi was there in South Africa from 1993 to 1911, and he launched a very strong movement of Indians for their rights. Satyagraha, which was earlier called passive resistance or something like that. Gandhi gave it a new name, Satyagraha based struggle based on non-violence. So Satyagraha was discovered there, but why Gandhi did try this with blacks also? So there is suspicion against Gandhi, and he was with British imperialism also, that his thinking was that the British imperialism is for the benefit of us all. If it's there, it will do good. If it's not doing, but it should do good to the people, and it will do to the people if convinced and if persuaded. So let there be imperialism, but there should be justice to all. This was the stand of Gandhi at that time, though later it changed. But when he was in Africa, this was his stand. But even under that imperialism, Gandhi fought for Indian rights. Why not for blacks' rights? In 1936, a journalist, Howard Thurman, with his wife Belly, came to meet Gandhi, and they asked directly that why you didn't do that. So Gandhi's answer was that I didn't do that deliberately. Because his emphasis was on 2 points. One, on non-violence. Without non-violence, he was against getting freedom also. If there is no non-violence, then freedom is a myth. His conviction was there. And he was not sure that what communication he has with Indian society, and he has to lead them against the British oppression, but non-violently. If blacks will also join, had he said that type of communication with them, that type of correlation with them? He was not sure. So he thought it's better not to take them together. He answered to Thurman that it was my I did it deliberately because of this reason. And when Gandhi made his ashram in Phoenix in 1994, in that area, a Zulu leader who studied in America and go back to South Africa to make his house in the area where Phoenix Ashram was established later. That Zulu leader, John Dobe, when he saw that Indians are marching ahead to protest the oppression and the British soldiers are beating them like anything, oppressing them like anything, and they are not protesting at all. They are totally non-violent. So he was surprised, and then he remarked that it's the connection of Gandhi with the Indian society, Indians, that he convinced them not to protest violently, but face everything, every brutality, non-violently. And Gandhi had his finger on their pulse, on the pulse of the Indians. And Gandhi was not sure about the pulse of the black. So non-violence was so vital for Gandhi. Another point which Gandhi emphasized again and again, that there must be a leadership from among black people. हाँ,
1994
अच्छा. At one point I said that Phoenix Ashram was established in 1994, but it's wrong. It's 1894. It has been reminded to me. It was in 1894.
1890.
Then Gandhi emphasized this also, that leadership should come from among black people, and they should fight their right under their leadership, because he made distinction between these two rights. The Indian rights was Indians were not the native people of Africa. They were brought there for some work. They were called coolie, like bonded laborers. They were working there, but they were not the original citizens of that place. But black people were natives. They must have many rights. Indian might not have these rights, but natives have these rights. Automatically it should have been given to them, but they have been deprived of these things. So there were difference in the character of the right of the natives and character of the right of the outsiders, that is Indians. So from this point of view also, Gandhi was thinking that they should have different demands and they should have different strategies. And as I said, that they should have their own leadership, and Indians were led by me. So he didn't do that. It doesn't mean that there were no black leaders at that time in South Africa. The John Dobey himself was one of the leaders, and others also there. And Gandhi had a regular meeting with them, regular communication with them, and naturally might be suggesting many things, but he didn't make effort for the joint movement. So these two were the cause, and it was proved later. Come forward to 1922 in India, when he launched his first non-cooperation movement under his leadership. It was the first great and big satyagraha all over the country under the leadership of Gandhi, and it started in 1920 and was withdrawn in 1922. It was going a great success and had very good effect for the freedom struggle of India. But he decided to withdraw the movement suddenly because a violent incident happened in a remote village of eastern India. The name of the village is Chauri Chaura. So because of that violence, all the other leaders, Nehru or Motilal Nehru or even Rabindranath Tagore, he himself opposed the withdrawal. That it's a very good going movement who has electrified whole of India. How you can withdraw this on the pretext of the violence at a remote village and incidents of one violence. There the protesters, the processionists for the movement, they were being beaten brutally by the British police. They were Indians but doing job for the British people. But when the processionists or protesters saw that these policemen are numbered, very few, and we are in great number, so then they retaliated to take revenge. So it happened that police fly to their house, and they locked themselves from inside. But from outside, the protesters burned their house, and many policemen burned alive. So this was the incident. So Gandhi decided at that time that I should withdraw this movement. And after 10 days of discussions and feedbacks, Gandhi changed his mind and withdraw the movement. So he was so emphatic for the non-violence, and he was convinced that if oppression is to be opposed for the better, then it has to be non-violent. Many times he said that I don't want freedom also at the cost of non-violence. So this conviction was from that time, from the South Africa time. So he did try the norms, but he discovered a new thing, that is Satyagraha. So this was the cause that he didn't take blacks together, made a joint front. And there was no trace of color difference or apartheid policy in which Gandhi was in favor, not at all. The other examples are there which proves that he has no reminiscences in him, nothing, no feeling of this time. In his childhood, I will give you two examples. The untouchable in India, casteism is there, and there is a untouchable caste, which is still in the remote areas it's being practiced, and in the feeling still we have the untouchability is not in practice but in feelings it's there still. So in the childhood, means 1870s, Gandhi was there playing with a boy whose mother, or that boy was belonging to an untouchable caste. His mother was coming to the Gandhi's house to scavenge the night soil. She was collecting night soil of the houses around and throwing it away somewhere. So that was the duty of a caste which was untouchable, most downtrodden and most segregated from the society. So that boy was belonging to that caste, but Gandhi made a friendship with him, Uka. But his mother was not prepared for this. Gandhi's mother told Gandhi that it's not good. If you play with him, then you have to take a full bath outside the house, then enter the house. So, but Gandhi questioned that why? If I play with other boys, then you are not telling me to take a bath. And when I am playing with this boy, who is very close to me, and you are telling that take a full bath, I will not fall away this. So this type of attitude of Gandhi was from the very childhood, to adopt any human being as his friend, as equally, and taking the other person his own. The same thing happened with a Muslim. He was a Muslim boy. Muslim also was considered to be untouchable in India for a long time. But he befriended Muslim also, Muslim boy. He advised Gandhi against his family traditional practice. He advised Gandhi to eat meat, that if you will not eat meat, you will not be strong enough to fight the British. So Gandhi had full faith in that boy. Some Mehtab Alam or something like that. So he followed him and he believed him, because he has no doubt or no difference that he is a Muslim or Hindu or whatever else. Just he went with him. So this was his attitude, and attitude that practicing no difference between castes. So race is also something like that, from where the feeling of race or the hatred against some color is pointed in the brain, which part instigate this thing. The same part must be instigating caste feeling also. But Gandhi had not that from his childhood. And so when he went to Africa, he didn't felt anything against them, but he was sympathetic that they are being oppressed. But as he was thinking that the British imperialism is for the benefit of us, so he was not going against British imperialism, but it does mean that he was against black people. When he came back to India in 1914, then also he had the same thinking that British imperialism is good for India. And only after 5 years, in 1919, when there was a brutal firing on Indian, there was a meeting in Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar. So there was a brutal firing, one-sided firing on a totally non-violent mob. That then Gandhi changed his stance and he became the anti-British regime. He said that the British imperialism is satanic. This government is satanic. So only after 1919 he changed his stance. It doesn't mean that before that he was against Indians or was not in favor of freedom of India. But because of this understanding, he was not against the British imperialism, but was sympathetic and in favor of blacks. One incident, when he founded his Phoenix Ashram in South Africa, then there were Zulus rebellion. It's a famous episode in the history of South Africa that after Boer War, it were Zulu tribe who rebelled against Britishers. It was actually, in fact, it was not a rebellion, but the leader of the Zulu tribe just tell the Zulus that don't pay the extra tax which was imposed upon them. So British were all out to kill them, to suppress them. So, but it was propagated as Zulu's rebellion. So Gandhi organized an ambulance corps to serve the injured in the war, in that rebellion. So British regime accepted this service and he went to the war field. Then he saw that it's not a war, it's a one-sided thing, and in fact it's a manhunt, which pained him much. But that situation was like that he has to reconcile with the situation and serve the injured. And injured means Zulus. The white soldiers or white men were not ready to nurse them. The Zulus who were injured badly by flogging or by beating or by firing. All this was one-sided. But white men were not ready to serve or nurse these injured Zulus. So when Indian Corps went there, Zulus were very happy and they served them well. They nursed them well, doing the dressing and other nursing things. So there was a rapport with the Zulu people very closely. And in fact, that was the movement during which this idea of a very new idea of brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is a Sanskrit word, popular in Hindi also, but means the lifelong celibacy. So while Gandhi was serving or nursing, it came to his mind that if I have to do it well to all, dedicated in a dedicated way, then I have to follow brahmacharya. I have to follow a lifelong celibacy. Then I can serve people much better. So this idea occurred to him while he was working among black people. So this also shows his attitude, that he was getting inspiration even from blacks or even from other people whom he was not so much related. One more example which is very vivid, that when he was in prison in 1922-1923 in Pune, Yerwada prison. Yerwada was the name of the prison. So when he withdrew the movement, non-cooperation movement in 22, then he was arrested. It was the tactics of the imperial rule that when the movement is on the rise, don't arrest the leaders. When it's going down, arrest the leaders. So when Gandhi withdrew the movement, so he was arrested and put in Yerwada prison. One of the colleagues of Gandhi, Mr. Yagnik, he has written a memoir that one day there was a warden, Somaliland black person. He was the warden of the prison, and a scorpio bit him. So he cried, and Gandhi ran to him, and he didn't find anything, but he was trying to cut the wound where Scorpio has bitten and take out the poison from the wound. And he asked for a knife, and when knife came, it was not clean, it was dirty. So he threw that knife and cleaned the place where the Scorpio had bitten, and puts his mouth on the wound and sucked the poison and was spitting outside, again sucking the poison and spitting outside, till he got some relief of his pain. So if Gandhi would have felt any distance between black people, he would not have done thing like this. It's very intimate, and only that person can do who is not feeling any difference between other human being. So this is very vivid example. And in 1939, when Reverend Tema was a priest and a minister of church, was a member of ANC, African National Congress. He came to meet Gandhi and he asked the same question, that why you didn't do that, and Gandhi's answer was the same, but he said that the now situation has changed. The technique of satyagraha is also accepted theoretically by all the people that yes, it's a good technique and maybe successful. So in this situation, there can be a joint front. There should be a joint front. Indians should have their own leadership, blacks should have their own leadership, and for many demands they can fight separately, but on many demands which are common, they can fight jointly. So this type of common joint front can be made, should be made, and it will have a good effect. Indians must realize that if blacks will not get their right, Indians are not going to get their right. And if in a joint effort some interest is being served of the black people, native people, which is against the interest of the Indian people, then Indian people should withdraw that demand, and justice should be done to the native people. So in the situation of contradiction, native people has to be given weightage or preference, and the people from outside must keep themselves below the native people. So it was his strategy and his suggestion. So it's very clear that Gandhi was not against the right of the black, but was for the right of the black, So when the black people had their own leaders, then all these leaders realized that Gandhi was right, and the non-violence is the only way through which we can gain rights and we can gain the freedom. As you will see that Martin Luther King, the most non-violent leader in the black history, he considered Gandhi as a friend, as a guide, as a philosopher for himself, and he tried to launch the black movement in the line of non-violence. It's not to say everyone knows. And the same happened in South Africa, that when Nelson Mandela, who had earlier believed in violence, but when he came out of prison, he found the strategy of Gandhi or the strategy of non-violence much better, much stronger than the violent ways. And he adopted that. And you will see that without shedding a drop of blood, he became the president of the country. And when Nelson Mandela was asked that why Gandhi didn't do something for the black people, so his reply was that these were the times and circumstances which compelled Gandhi not to do like that. So Mandela had a clear idea of this thing because he was from South Africa, a native person. So he understood Gandhi well. So I think that those who think they should not, that Gandhi was against black people in any way. So that's my point, and that I wanted to convey to you, that please understand the history and develop yourself or develop your thinking, learning from the history, not opposing the history or not taking the part of the history which gives in you hatred, which fills you with hatred. There may be some part, but as far as Gandhi is concerned, it's total misunderstanding that he was at some point of time in South Africa against black people. I told you about a Muslim boy who led Gandhi to eat meat. So it doesn't mean that he became non-vegetarian. Soon he realized that it's wrong that only meat can make him strong. The vegetarian food is also equally well nutrition wise and otherwise. So then he left that practice. It was some 1 month or 2 months like that, and then again he became vegetarian, and how strictly he was vegetarian we all know. And for future, particularly to American blacks, Gandhi suggested that they should not feel ashamed of being grandchildren of slaves. Being the children of slaves is not shameful, but being the children of enslaving generation, that may be shameful. So this kind of sense of shame must not be there among blacks of America. Another point, he said that till they will stick to non-violence, to purity, to love, they will win every fight, every struggle. So these 2 points must be remembered by the blacks in America.